The vast plains of the Serengeti stretched endlessly beneath the deep blue sky, where the golden grasses swayed gently in the warm breeze. This was a land of life and survival, where every creature had its role in the circle of nature. Among the many inhabitants of this wilderness was a lion pride, known throughout the region for its strength and unity. At the center of this pride stood Sura, a powerful lioness whose presence commanded respect. She was a mother to several cubs, nurturing them with fierce love and teaching them the ways of the wild. Sura had always been confident in her ability to protect her family, to keep them safe from the many dangers that roamed the plains, from stealthy leopards to packs of cunning hyenas. However, recently, she had grown uneasy because of one particular cub, her youngest daughter, Luma. Something about Luma was different, something that stirred a deep worry within Sura's heart. Luma was still a cub, barely 10 moons old, full of energy and curiosity not long ago. She had been the pride's little spark, chasing after the older cubs with playful growls and bounding across the grasslands with clumsy enthusiasm. But over the past few weeks, her behavior had changed in ways that did not fit the natural pattern of a growing lioness. She no longer joined in the boisterous games, instead choosing to sit quietly under the shade of an acacia tree, her gaze distant and unfocused. Her appetite had diminished, and her usual eagerness to hunt small prey was replaced by lethargy and weakness. Sura watched these changes closely, her maternal instincts sharpened to every small detail. She noticed the swelling of Luma's belly, subtle at first, but becoming more pronounced with each passing day. Her mind raced with questions and fears. Was her cub sick? Was she carrying something inside her that could change her future forever? In the wild, lions had no medicine or healers. They depended entirely on their instincts and ancient wisdom passed down through generations. For Sura, the signs were confusing and troubling. As the sun beat down on Savannah, Sura's worry deepened. She kept a close eye on Luma, who now moved more slowly, resting frequently and appearing tired beyond her years. The other lionesses in pride noticed the changes too, whispering amongst themselves in low growls and murmurs. Some suggested Luma might be suffering from an illness, perhaps an infection or parasite that had weakened her. Others, in hushed tones, wondered if she might be pregnant, though the idea seemed almost impossible. After all, Luma was far too young to bear cubs, yet the evidence of her swollen belly and her change in behavior was difficult to dismiss. The pride elders, wise and experienced, debated quietly but did not share their thoughts openly, out of respect for Sura's feelings. They knew that the mother lioness's pride was a delicate thing, easily broken by fear or misunderstanding. Sura herself struggled to accept what she was beginning to suspect. The thought of her daughter being pregnant so early was unsettling. The savannah was no place for such vulnerability. Pregnant or not, Luma was not strong enough to defend herself fully against the dangers that prowled the land. Sura's protective instincts became stronger than ever. She followed her daughter everywhere, snarling softly at the other cubs who came too close. She growled warnings at the younger males of the pride, keeping them at a distance from Luma. Even Raji, the dominant male whose powerful roars echoed across their territory, kept a careful watch but rarely interfered. Sura's vigilance created an unspoken tension within the pride. The harmony they had once enjoyed felt fragile, hanging by a thread woven from fear and uncertainty. One evening, as the sun began to sink below the horizon in a spectacular display of reds and oranges, Sura sat quietly beside Luma beneath the branches of an old baobab tree. The air was cool, and a long shadow stretched across the plains. Luma rested her head gently against her mother's side, seeking comfort in the warmth of her presence. Sura licked her daughters for softly, whispering soothing sounds only a mother could understand. In that moment, surrounded by the vastness of the wild, Sura's thoughts were heavy. What was truly wrong with her daughter? What did the swollen belly mean? Could she be carrying cubs? The possibility terrified Sura, but she could not turn away from the signs she had seen with her own eyes. The night was filled with the sounds of savannah, distant calls of hyenas, the rustle of grass as small creatures moved cautiously, the occasional roar from a lion marking its territory. Despite the wildness around them, Sura's heart beat steadily with resolve. She would protect Luma at any cost. The next morning, before the pride had fully awakened, Sura made a choice that would change everything. She gathered Luma close to her, nuzzling the cub softly before rising to her feet. Without hesitation, she began to lead her daughter away from the familiar grounds of the pride. The other lionesses and cubs watched in silence, their eyes wide with shock and confusion. No one understood why Sura was leaving, or what had driven her to such a drastic decision. The journey was not easy. The land beyond the pride's territory was harsh and unforgiving. They crossed rocky hills, uneven ground dotted with sharp stones and sparse vegetation. Few animals dared to enter this desolate place. Yet Sura moved with purpose, her strong muscles carrying her and her cubs swiftly and carefully. She sought a place where she could shelter Luma from the dangers of the open plains, a sanctuary where no rival lion or predator could harm them. At night, she curled protectively around Luma, her body a shield against the chill and the threat of unseen enemies. Days passed in this lonely exile. Sura hunted alone, bringing back fresh meat for Luma to eat, though the cub's appetite remained weak. The cub's swelling did not disappear, and her strength seemed to wane. Sura's fierce eyes never left her daughter's fragile form. She whispered promises of safety and love, even as doubts gnawed at her heart. What if she had been wrong? What if the danger was not from outside, but from within Luma's body? She dared not voice such fears aloud, but they haunted her nights. One evening, as a storm gathered on the horizon, dark clouds rolling in like great waves, Luma's condition worsened. She vomited violently and collapsed into unconsciousness. Sura was frantic, roaring into the storm as if summoning the spirits of their ancestors for aid. She licked and nuzzled her daughter, willing her to awaken, to fight. The storm raged around them, rain pounding the rocky shelter, thunder shaking the earth. Sura's heart was torn between hope and despair. When the storm finally passed, dawn brought a fragile light to the world. Sura knew that she could not stay hidden forever. They must return to the pride for help. The journey back was perilous. Hyenas prowled the night, vultures circled overhead, and a lone leopard attempted to ambush them. Sura fought with the strength of a mother protecting her cub, her growls fierce and unyielding. Only when they reached the safety of their territory did the pride come forward, wary but concerned. The dominant male, Raji, approached cautiously, sensing the tension and the seriousness of the situation. The elder lionesses gathered around, their eyes filled with questions and relief. Sura stood tall, her body a barrier between Luma and the others, until the oldest lioness, Nia, stepped forward. With a gentle touch, Nia examined Luma carefully, her experienced eyes searching for answers. She listened for signs, smelled the air around the cub, and then spoke softly but clearly. Luma was not carrying cubs. Instead, she was suffering from an internal illness, a swelling caused by something wrong inside her body. The arrival of human veterinarians a few days later brought hope. They sedated Luma and used their tools to discover the true cause of her suffering. It was a rare tumor pressing against her organs, creating the appearance of pregnancy. Sura watched the humans work silently, hope and fear mingling in her eyes. She had risked exile, danger, and the wrath of pride because she believed she was protecting a new life inside her daughter. In truth, what she protected was her cub's very survival. Luma survived the surgery and slowly regained her strength. The swelling faded, and her energy returned. The pride welcomed her back with open hearts, especially Sura, whose love had moved mountains. In the quiet moments after the ordeal, Sura realized that the deepest bond between mother and child was not just about protecting new life, but also about fighting for hope when the future seems uncertain. Her instincts had been right in their own way, for the precious gift growing inside Luma was not a cub, but the promise of many more seasons to come. After the harrowing experience of Luma's illness and the uncertain days spent in exile with her mother, life within the pride slowly began to regain its rhythm. The Serengeti's vast plains resumed their usual melody of movement and sound. The gentle rustling of grasses, the distant calls of birds, the steady footsteps of lions patrolling their territory. For Sura, the relief of seeing her daughter regain strength was immeasurable, yet she understood that this was only the beginning of a long journey toward healing and trust. The pride was not merely a collection of lions, but a complex family bound together by loyalty, cooperation, and shared responsibility. Now, more than ever, these bonds would be tested. Luma's return was met with cautious acceptance. The other cubs, who had once observed her with curiosity and now with concern, began to approach her again with tentative playfulness. The younger lionesses of pride, those who had once whispered behind Sura's back, now watched with admiration as the cub who had survived so much began to thrive again. It was as if Luma's experience had taught the pride something important. That strength was not only measured by muscle and ferocity, but also by resilience and the will to overcome adversity. Sura's vigilance never faltered, but she allowed her daughter more freedom to explore, to test her legs once again in the grassy plains. The pride's daily life was a delicate balance of hunting, resting, and protecting their territory from rivals and threats. Sura knew well that the Serengeti was an unforgiving place where every day brought new challenges. The dominant male, Raji, continued to patrol with his deep, resonant roars that echoed across the plains, warning other males to keep their distance. He was a majestic figure, powerful and commanding respect from all who knew him. Yet even he understood that the survival of the pride depended heavily on the cooperation of its lionesses, especially the mothers who nurtured the next generation. Sura and the other females worked together with a silent understanding, sharing the responsibilities of hunting and protecting their cubs. One morning, as the first light of dawn painted the sky with soft pinks and oranges, the pride gathered near a watering hole. The air was cool and fresh, a temporary respite before the heat of the day took hold. Sura watched as Luma tentatively approached the water, her reflection shimmering in the surface. The cub was still smaller and weaker than her siblings, but the fire in her eyes had returned. It was a fire that spoke of courage and determination, qualities that would serve her well in the days to come. As Luma drank, Sura's thoughts drifted to the future. She wondered what kind of lioness her daughter would become and what challenges she would face as she grew. The pride's hunters, led by the older lionesses, prepared for the day's hunt. The hunt was not merely an act of survival. It was a lesson passed down through generations, a dance between predator and prey that required skill, patience, and cooperation. Sura remembered her own lessons, how she had learned to move silently through grasses, how to read the wind and the movements of the herd. She passed these lessons on to Luma and the other cubs whenever she could, though she knew that the cubs still needed time to grow strong. The hunting party moved with precision, their bodies low and muscles taut, ready to spring at the right moment. The thrill of the hunt was always mixed with respect for prey, and understanding that their lives depended on the lives of others in the great cycle of nature. As the days turned into weeks, the pride's routine continued, but new challenges began to surface. Rival prides, ever watchful for signs of weakness, had started to encroach on the edges of their territory. Sura noticed a tension in the air, the quickened pace of the lion's movements, the deeper growls exchanged among the adults. Territory was life for lions, a place to hunt, to raise young, and to live in safety. The loss of even a small area could mean hunger, danger, and loss. The male lions took up the task of defending their borders, patrolling day and night with fierce determination. The lionesses, meanwhile, prepared their cubs for a world that was often harsh and unforgiving. One afternoon, as the sun reached its highest point and the heat pressed down on the land, Sura gathered the cubs beneath the shade of a large fig tree. It was time for a lesson, not in hunting or fighting, but in the strength of unity and trust. She looked at each young face, noting their eagerness and curiosity. The world beyond the pride was vast and unpredictable, but within the family, they could find safety. Sura's voice was calm but firm as she shared stories of their ancestors, of battles fought and won, of the importance of sticking together. The cubs listened attentively, their eyes wide with wonder. These stories were more than tales. They were the foundation of their identity. Luma, sitting close to her mother, absorbed every word. She understood more than the others did the importance of these lessons. Her own journey through illness and recovery had taught her the value of strength and the power of love. She wanted to be strong, not just in body but in spirit. She watched as her mother and the other lionesses moved gracefully through grasslands, their movement a reminder of the life she hoped to lead. The cub's heart was filled with hope, tempered by the knowledge that life in the wild was never easy. As the dry season approached, the challenges for the pride grew more severe. Water became scarce, and the animals they hunted grew wary and fewer in number. The lions had to travel farther and hunt smarter. Sura and the other lionesses planned their movements carefully, studying the patterns of prey and water sources. They communicated through subtle signals: a flick of the tail, a soft growl, a glance. The Pride was a well-organized team, each member playing a vital role. Luma watched and learned, beginning to understand the complexity of life in the Serengeti. One evening, as the stars blanketed the sky and the night brought cool relief, the Pride gathered in a circle. Sura sat beside Luma, who rested her head against her mother's flank. The sound of the night surrounded them: the distant hoot of an owl, the rustle of leaves as a small mammal scurried nearby. In this moment of peace, Sura's thoughts drifted to the future. She knew that Luma's path would not be easy. The cub would face dangers and challenges that no lion could fully prepare her for. But she also knew that with the Pride behind her, with the strength of family and the lessons of the wild, Luma could grow into a lioness who would make her ancestors proud. The bond between mother and daughter was stronger than ever. Sura's love was fierce and unwavering, a shield against the hardships of the world. She would continue to watch over Luma, guiding her with patience and wisdom. The Pride, too, would stand united, their collective strength a force that no rival could break. Together, they faced the uncertain future with courage and hope. Life in the Serengeti was a constant struggle, but it was also a place of beauty and wonder. The golden grasses, the endless skies, the cycles of life and death, all were part of the story that Sura and Luma were now writing. The lioness's heart was full of determination, ready to face whatever came next. The Pride was her family, the land her home, and the future hers to shape. The Serengeti's golden plains shimmered beneath the relentless sun as the seasons slowly shifted, bringing with them new challenges for the lion Pride. The dry winds carried dust and whispers of change across the land. For Sura and her daughter Luma, life had entered a delicate balance, one that required constant vigilance and strength. Though Luma had recovered from her illness, the scars of those difficult days remained etched in the memories of both mother and cub. Sura's protective instincts had only grown stronger, but the wild world beyond the Pride was filled with unseen dangers that could strike without warning and leave devastation in their wake. The Pride's territory, once secure and expansive, was now threatened by encroaching rivals. Other lion prides, hungry for land and resources, had begun to push closer, testing boundaries with further patrols and occasional confrontations. The delicate peace that had existed for so long was breaking down under the pressure of survival. Sura observed these developments with growing concern. Each day brought reports of unfamiliar tracks near their borders, signs that rival males and females were attempting to stake their claim. The lion's roars, once a confident declaration of ownership, now carried a sharper edge, a warning to those who dared approach. The competition for territory was fierce and unyielding, fueled by the need to secure food, water, and safety for the cubs. Within the Pride, the atmosphere had shifted as well. The lionesses were no longer just mothers and sisters. They had become warriors and strategists. They moved with a new sense of purpose, coordinating hunts and patrols with precision. Sura took her place at the heart of this effort, drawing on her experience and wisdom to guide the younger females. She shared stories of past battles, teaching them how to read the signs of danger and how to defend their home without unnecessary risk. The Pride's survival depended on unity, on the ability to work as a single force against any threat. Sura knew that every member had a role to play, and she was determined that Luma would learn these lessons well. Luma, now stronger and more confident, began to take her first steps into the wider world beyond the protective circle of her mother. She shadowed the older lionesses on hunts, learning to move silently and watch keenly. She watched the subtle communications among the Pride. A flick of the tail, a change in posture, a soft growl, signals that conveyed meaning beyond words. These lessons were crucial. The wild was not a place for the careless or the weak. It was a place where survival required understanding, respect, and courage. Luma's spirit burned bright with determination. She wanted to prove herself, to show that she was ready to face the challenges ahead. One morning, just as the sun was rising and casting long shadows over the plains, the Pride gathered near a cluster of dense bushes. A herd of wildebeest grazed nearby, unaware of the silent hunters watching them. Sura led the hunting party, moving with grace and focus. The hunt was a test of skill, patience, and teamwork. The lions spread out, encircling the herd to prevent any escape. Luma watched closely, feeling her heart race with anticipation. She had been allowed to participate more fully in recent days, though she was still learning the delicate balance between speed and stealth. The hunt was not merely about catching prey. It was a lesson in timing and cooperation. One false move could alert the herd and ruin the chance for a successful kill. As the hunt progressed, tension mounted. The wildebeests, sensing danger, began to move nervously, their eyes scanning the horizon. Sura signaled with a low growl, and the lions tightened their circle. Then, in a burst of coordinated energy, the chase began. The lionesses sprinted forward, their powerful muscles propelling them across the grasslands. Luma tried to keep pace, her legs pumping hard, but she quickly learned that strength alone was not enough. She had to time her movements, stay low, and anticipate the herd's reactions. The wildebeest scattered in different directions, creating confusion and making it difficult for the lions to isolate a target. The air was filled with dust and noise, the sounds of hooves pounding in the roaring wind. It was a dance of life and death, played out under the watchful eyes of the savannah. Despite their best efforts, the hunt did not end in a kill that day. The herd escaped, aided by the speed and agility of their young calves. Sura, though disappointed, remained calm. She gathered her pride and reminded them that not every hunt will be successful, but each attempt was a step toward mastery. The lions returned to the shade of the acacia trees, panting and covered in dust. Luma, though tired, was filled with a new sense of purpose. She understood that patience and persistence were just as important as strength. The pride's survival depended on these qualities as much as on fierce claws and sharp teeth. However, the return to camp was not without incident. As the lions rested, a shadow moved at the edge of their territory. A rival male lion, large and imposing, had slipped into their land under the cover of dusk. He was a stranger, unfamiliar with the customs and boundaries respected by the pride. His eyes gleamed with hunger and ambition. The male's presence was a direct challenge to Raji, the dominant male. Sura's body tensed as she sensed the danger. The pride's harmony was at risk. The air was thick with tension as the lions prepared for confrontation. The encounter was swift and fierce. Raji rose to his feet, his mane bristling with power. The rival approached with defiant roars, his challenge clear. The two males circled each other, their muscles coiled like springs ready to strike. The ground trembled beneath their weight as they clashed in a battle that could decide the fate of the pride. The lionesses stood back, watching with bated breath, ready to defend their cubs if needed. Sura's eyes never left the fight, her mind calculating every move, every possible outcome. The pride's future depended on Raji's victory. The struggle was long and brutal. Both males suffered wounds, but Raji's experience and strength eventually prevailed. The rival was driven away, his roars fading into the distance. The pride breathed a collective sigh of relief, but the cost of the battle was clear. Raji limped slightly, his body marked by scratches and bites. The lionesses tended to him, their care and concern evident in gentle nuzzles and soft growls. Sura's thoughts were heavy with worry. The fight had shown how fragile their hold on the territory had become. They could not afford to grow weak or complacent. In the days that followed, the pride adjusted to new reality. Raji's strength had been tested, and though he remained a leader, the threat of rivals lingered like a dark cloud. The lionesses increased their vigilance, patrolling the borders and teaching the cubs to recognize danger. Sura continued to guide Luma, preparing her for the responsibilities she would one day inherit. The cub's eyes reflected a mixture of determination and understanding. She had seen the harshness of the world, but also its beauty and the power of family. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low and cast long golden rays across the plains, Sura and Luma found a quiet moment beneath the shade of a giant baobab tree. The world around them was alive with the sounds of insects and birds settling in for the night. Sura spoke softly, sharing her wisdom and hopes for the future. She told Luma that courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to face it. She explained that the strength of the pride came from their unity, their loyalty to one another, and their respect for the land they call home. Luma listened intently, her heart swelling with pride and determination. The Serengeti was a land of constant change and challenge, but also of incredible resilience and hope. Sura and Luma, mother and daughter, were bound together by love and the shared will to survive. The Pride story was still being written, shaped by the trials they faced and the bonds they forged. In the vast wilderness, where the sun rose and set on endless horizons, the future remained uncertain. Yet, with each new day, the lion stood stronger, ready to face whatever shadows might come their way. The sun rose slowly over the endless expanse of the Serengeti, casting a warm golden light across the rolling plains and the ancient acacia trees that stood as silent sentinels to the passing of time. This morning was unlike any other the Pride had witnessed for many moons. The air felt charged with quiet promise, a subtle shift in the rhythm of life that seemed to breathe hope into the hearts of every lion who called this land home. Sura, the wise and ever-vigilant lioness, stirred gently beside her daughter Luma, who had grown from a fragile cub into a young lioness brimming with curiosity and courage. The bond between mother and daughter had deepened through trials and triumphs, forming an unbreakable thread woven from love, resilience, and shared experience. The world outside remained fraught with danger and uncertainty, yet there was an undeniable sense that the Pride stood on the cusp of something new, something better, something that would test their spirit and unify them in ways they had never imagined. The journey to this moment had been marked by struggle and sacrifice. The dry season, harsh and unforgiving, had tested the Pride's endurance. Waterholes had shrunk to puddles, and the once plentiful herds of antelope and wildebeest had become scattered shadows, their vigilance sharpened by hunger and the ever-present threat of predators. The rival Prides, sensing weakness, continued to press their advantage, their roars echoing in the distance like thunder rolling across the plains. Yet through these challenges, the Pride had persevered. Sura's leadership had been a beacon of strength and wisdom. She had guided the lionesses in their hunts, coordinated their patrols, and fostered a sense of unity that had become their greatest weapon against the encroaching dangers. Luma, though still young, had absorbed every lesson with fierce determination. She had watched her mother face threats with calm resolve and had begun to understand the complex balance between patience and aggression, trust and caution in this crucible of experience. Luma was becoming the lioness she was destined to be. On this particular morning, the Pride gathered near a broad riverbank where the water flowed steadily, a precious artery of life in the harsh landscape. The cubs played in the shallows, their joyous splashes a momentary reprieve from the ever-present seriousness of survival. The older lions lounged in the shade, their eyes scanning the horizon with practiced vigilance. Sura found a quiet spot beneath a large fig tree and beckoned Luma to sit beside her. The mother's voice was low and gentle as she began to speak of the future. She told her daughter that the Pride was more than just a family. It was a community, a force greater than the sum of its parts. Each lioness, each cub, each male had a role to play in the grand tapestry of life. Sura emphasized that strength came not only from muscle and speed, but from wisdom, courage, and above all, loyalty. These were the values that would carry the Pride forward, even through the darkest times. Luma listened intently, the fire in her eyes reflecting the morning light. She felt the weight of her mother's words settle in her heart. There was a stirring inside her, a realization that her journey was only beginning, and that the legacy of the Pride rested partly on her young shoulders. Sura's gaze softened as she saw the determination growing within her daughter. She knew that the cub who had once been so fragile now held the potential to lead, to inspire, and to protect. It was a future filled with promise, but also responsibility. The lioness reminded Luma that every dawn brought new opportunities and new challenges, and that the strength to face them came from within and from the unyielding support of their family. The peace of that morning was soon broken by the urgent calls of a scout lioness. A small group of hyenas had been spotted near the edge of the territory, scavengers notorious for their cunning and their ability to disrupt the delicate balance of power. Sura sprang to her feet, her body coiled like a spring ready to launch. The Pride quickly gathered, instinct sharpening as they prepared to defend their home. Luma followed closely, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. The encounter with the hyenas was tense and brief. The lionesses moved with swift precision, their combined strength driving the scavengers away without needless violence. This episode served as a stark reminder that vigilance must never waver, and that every member of the Pride, regardless of age or experience, had a part to play in their shared survival. The days that followed were filled with preparation and training. Sura intensified Luma's lessons, guiding her through the nuances of hunting strategy, territory marking, and social bonding. The young lioness learned to read the subtle cues of the environment, the shifting winds that carried scents, the distant movements of prey, and the complex hierarchies within their own pride. She practiced stalking and pouncing with increasing skill, her muscles growing stronger and more coordinated. Yet beyond the physical training, Sura also taught her daughter about the importance of compassion and patience. The Serengeti was a harsh world, but it was also one where kindness and respect could flourish among family and allies. Luma observed how the lionesses cared for their cubs, how they shared food and watched out for one another. These acts of nurturing were as vital as any hunt or battle. Amidst these lessons, a new challenge emerged that would push the Pride to its limits. The rains, which usually brought relief and renewal, were delayed this year. The land grew parched, and the river banks receded further. The prey animals migrated in larger numbers and farther distances, forcing the lions to travel greater lengths in search of food. The Pride moved together as a single unit, their steps heavy with fatigue, but their spirits unbroken. Sura's leadership became even more crucial as she coordinated hunts and managed the Pride's energy. She encouraged the lionesses to conserve strength and to hunt strategically, focusing on vulnerable targets rather than chasing after the swiftest prey. Luma's understanding deepened as she witnessed the delicate balance between hunger and survival, power and patience. During one of these long treks, the Pride encountered an injured zebra struggling to keep pace with its herd. Sura made the decision to pursue the vulnerable animal, teaching Luma about the importance of recognizing opportunity and timing. The hunt was successful, providing the Pride with much-needed nourishment, but it also revealed the cost of survival. The physical toll on the lions, the careful sharing of the kill, and the constant awareness that each victory was fleeting. The young lioness saw firsthand how cooperation and respect within the Pride ensured that no lion was left hungry or weak. The sense of family and shared fate was a source of strength that sustained them through the harshest conditions. One evening, as the stars began to fill the sky, Sura and Luma found themselves alone by a quiet pool of water. The night was filled with the sounds of crickets and distant calls of nocturnal creatures. Sura spoke again of the past, recounting stories of her own mother and the generations that had come before. She described how each lioness had faced her own battles and fears, yet stood firm for the Pride. She told Luma that the legacy they carried was not just about survival, but about building a future where the cubs could thrive and live in harmony with the land. Luma's heart swelled with pride and hope. She understood that she was part of something much greater than herself. The next morning brought a fresh breeze and the first drops of rain in many weeks. The land began to awaken, the grasses growing greener, and the air filled with the scent of renewal. The Pride felt a collective surge of energy and optimism. Sura watched as Luma stretched and prepared to join the others in the hunt. The young lioness's steps were confident and sure. She was no longer the fragile cub who had struggled to survive, but a strong and capable lioness ready to face the future. The bond between mother and daughter, forged in love and tested by hardship, was a testament to the enduring spirit of the Pride. As the rains continued and the Serengeti blossomed anew, the Pride adapted to their changing world with grace and strength. Rivals still lurked at the edges of their territory, and the challenges of survival remained constant. Yet within the Pride, there was a renewed sense of hope and unity. Sura and Luma stood side by side, a living symbol of resilience and the promise of a new dawn. Together, they would face whatever the wild had in store, bound by the unbreakable ties of family, courage, and love. The story of the Pride was far from over, but the future looked brighter than it had in many seasons. With each sunrise, they would continue to write their legacy on the vast canvas of the Serengeti, a testament to the strength found in unity and the power of a lioness's heart.